5:19. I've written that part down except the number, so 5:19 p.m. All right, and then I guess the first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes, and we're caught up, so this is just last month's minutes. You know, I had written most of it during, and I tried to put it more in summary format. If there's any questions or concerns over what was in them, please let me know, and we can I can, you know, revise. But any comments on the September 13 minutes? Not from Joe?
Not for me.
I have a couple. I noticed under attendees, I believe David Wood had attended that as well. Is that correct? His name wasn't on there.
I was there.
Yeah, you were. Okay. Oh, hello.
Okay, I'll add your name in to attendees. All right, anything else, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this to be nitpicky, but under the second page, under classification actions, the past that list, the second bullet, it says we are concerned how the town manager, the assistant manager, and HR director work together. I think I'd rather that reflect that we had a discussion about it. I don't know if there was concern. Again, sorry, I don't want to be nitpicky. I just
To change the verb.
yeah,
Concern,
exactly. And I think that was it for me.
Okay. Anything else? No?
Nope.
Okay, so I will put those in the minutes and send them back. Really to you?
That's
Is
fine.
that-
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
great.
then-
Yeah.
We
We're
could
gonna
vote. We could vote to approve as amended. I mean, if we want to do that.
If you do that tonight, then we can post them as final.
Okay. Do you want show?
You'll need a motion.
All right. Anybody want to make
So-
that motion?
I can make a motion to approve the minutes from September 13th, 2023 as amended.
Second.
And on favor, aye, Kate?
I think we have to do roll call. Is that correct?
Why don't we finish the vote? We're in the midst of, and then we'll go back.
No, I know, but I think it has to be a roll call vote, not a. Is that right?
Oh, because you're a vote. Okay, so
Yeah.
Kate, are you?
Yes,
Sorry.
sorry.
Okay, Joe
Yes.
and Liz, yes, okay. Motion to approve with, okay, so, I have a question on minutes. Is it necessary to put everyone who attends or just the committee members? Mark, if you were.
Anybody that speaks.
Anybody that speaks,
Yeah, you don't have to capture everybody.
okay,
Yeah, I've definitely seen it and other interested persons and that type of thing. But I think, I wouldn't have thought of anyone who speaks needs to be named, but of course they do.
okay, because I've been moving to summary minutes where I don't identify who's speaking. But nonetheless, if non-board members attend,
Somebody
okay,
addresses the committee, then
okay. Okay, great, I'm also doing it for tonight, so David, your name's on there again now. And Megan is not here, it's her name on.
No, Megan is online.
Oh, hi, Megan, okay,
Hello.
She has one of the jobs that has changed, that's before you tonight.
okay,
It's not just exactly as it was in the
I see.
study, so she'll be
Okay.
with us for just a while.
Okay, all right. And I know someone else is coming later, but you'll have to spell his name.
If you'd like it now, or you want, wouldn't you rise?
Now it's fine, I'll put it in
Yeah,
parentheses in case he doesn't make it.
Alan, A-L-A-N,
Uh-huh,
last name is Cart, C-A-T-H-C-A-R-T. And then the second gentleman, Jason, J-A-S-O-N,
mhm.
B-U-L-G-E-R.
Okay. All right, and they're in parentheses in case something happens and they don't make it, all right. And I can note that they can be met at what time.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so, exciting beginning here. Meeting without Bill, who usually runs these things, so. Interim Human Resources Director's report. Now, there were some things without the two gentlemen here that you wanted to reserve until they can make it, right? Is that in the report? Should we change the order then, or what do you think?
Yeah, the only adjustment that I'd like to offer is that Alan is at the Public Works Commission meeting, which typically he'll be here by about 6:15. And so his team is an integral piece, as is Jason's and Dave, who's with us. Their teams are represented in the standby pay policy. And so we'd like to hold that in abeyance until the Public Works Commission meeting concludes and Alan and the others can join.
Okay,
In case there are questions or.
okay, so should we skip the whole director's report and move to the next then? Is that
Well,
where that's?
Megan is here,
Okay,
and we can do whatever, we serve at the pleasure, so, you know, we can do whatever you like. But if you'd like to go ahead and go through the classification actions, those we can conclude with, and then Megan can get on.
okay, why don't we do that? Is that all right? Everyone's okay? All right.
The ones that are before you tonight, all but one are as they were stated in the study. So we're just bringing the descriptions before you for your concurrence. The first one that's before you tonight is facilities manager. Now you may recall that in the study, it was titled facilities director. But we're making an adjustment because there's been an adjustment to the reporting structure for the facilities department. When the study was completed, the facilities group was reporting up to the CFO. And with the departure of the CFO, that group has fallen under the care of Public Works. And we're seeing quite a few synergies working with the Public Works group. And interestingly, the two superintendents within Public Works are the same pay grade as the facilities manager. Their jobs are scoped identically at the same level. So it would be kind of unusual for within that department for two to be superintendents and one to be a director. And so we're just looking to adjust the title and post the job as facilities manager. Would you like to do, I can't remember if we did these individually or if we did the whole package.
I think, Kate, you had some interest in reading through all of them and voting on the totality of them.
Yeah, I think that's how we did it in the past.
Are there any questions on that one, or would you like me to move on?
I think that one's okay. Joe, do you have any questions?
Yeah. Okay. The IT operations manager, the business systems analyst, the human resources generalist, the water sewer system maintainer are all exactly as they were scoped in the study. So the only change to them is for the salary grade to be adjusted.
And those are different than what was in the study on the salary grade, so they're being moved.
Right, they were MP whatever or AC whatever, and now they're moving into the new salary plan.
Oh, I see, so it's the transition over to the new salary, I got it, all right.
And then the last one is in Megan's world. We did have a retirement for the person who fronts the Office of Public Health. And she had, I believe, like 30 years with the organization. So she had picked up some duties that someone coming off the street would not necessarily be able to perform. And so we completed a JAQ, and with those responsibilities removed, that we don't anticipate the new person, the new candidates being able to perform. The level is now of an office coordinator, so it moves from a grade 6 to a grade 5. The other duties are picked up by the new public health nurse, by one of the inspectors, and by the director.
So they were dispersed across 3 people.
Yeah, different pieces of parts. Are there any questions about the office coordinator for public health? Megan, did I do a fair job of that, or would you like to add anything?
No, you did. Thank you very much. Yes, since we had a longtime employee, Karen Byrne, retire recently. And she was here about 36 years. And so when she retired, we wanted to take a look at the position and not just kind of repost, because a lot has changed during her time. And as Kimberly stated, some of the responsibilities that she had picked up under previous directors, we reviewed it and could be taken on by other staff members, and is actually more appropriate, I think, at this stage to be taken on by other staff members. So when it was rescored, it came back as a 5. And I'll say that it's also more consistent with the other office coordinators in the department. So we thought it was a logical change.
Sounds good.
All right, then I think you'll just call for the vote.
Okay, so, and sorry, I didn't count because I counted incorrectly the first time. I think there were 6, 7 positions. Let's see. Facilities manager.
6.
6, okay. 6. So, shall we have a motion to approve the 6 positions that have been brought before us? I think it was 4 that are just to transfer to the new system, and 2 with some changes to them. Are we all in favor? Kate?
I so moved. Unless
Okay.
that you were doing the motion. Sorry.
Joan?
Second.
Second, okay. And I agree as well. There are only 3 of us. Is that enough about motions? Okay.
And then the other than the standby pay policy, I believe the next thing I have before you is that there's a grid that details the salary plan that stays out on our website, both for our internal use for employees and staff, and for the public, to be able to see what our pay plan looks like. Over the last few months, we have made a couple of edits to it, but I've not brought it before you for approval. And so I'm not sure if you need to approve it, but it stands to reason if you're approving the changes that you would want it to be kept up to date. So you'll see a red line version where tonight's change, if it were approved, from facilities director to facilities manager is included. I believe 2 meetings ago, you approved the electrical inspector addition. Last meeting, I think we talked about the senior producer and education coordinator. So you'll see that we removed an education coordinator under grade 4 that corresponds to that. And those are the changes that we're bringing before you tonight for your concurrence if it's wanted or necessary.
Okay. Any questions?
So do we need to approve this, since we've already approved the individual changes separately? That's my question. I mean, if that makes sense. I mean, we can vote to approve it. I'm not sure that we need to.
It really is a thought that we would just continue to update what's online. I think that's probably helpful. It's probably helpful for you as you go along, because as we get closer to town meeting, you need to pull all of that together. And it would, I think, I don't know that you need to.
Yeah,
To approve it, but well, I think keeping track of it in that document is probably helpful.
one of the things that we did is at the bottom, each of these has an asterisk by it that stays there. And at the bottom, the key is that anything with an asterisk was added subsequent to the 2023 town meeting. So that, after I'm gone here, when you guys look to put together your package for town meeting, it'll be obvious, not only from your minutes, but from this document, what was adjusted.
Okay. And that's only on the online version? There's only an online version of that, is that right?
We posted online.
Posted, okay, all right,
Obviously, yeah, I guess it exists in our records, but
okay.
just trying to be transparent to make this easy, you know, for everyone.
Yeah, control plan. All right, so I think Kate has a good point that we're probably not voting, but we can confirm that it's been discussed here at the meeting. We understand, I'll have this in the minutes where it can be found. And to summarize that there's an asterisk at the bottom that indicates that all the changes that have occurred throughout the calendar year. Right? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, all right, that sounds great. I think we are up to the pay policy, but we have to wait for folks, right?
Correct.
And so maybe we can start with the bylaw and have we'd have probably a good half-hour discussion before other folks that are not as interested as we are in the bylaw come. Is that all right? So
Sure.
Kate, why don't you step in to guide us through the work that you were doing?
Sure. So I can give you an overview. I started by reviewing, I did some research on other town bylaws. I looked at the GovHR. Well, first I started at the Personnel Study Task Force. I looked at what they had provided, and then I took the comparables that were mapped out as part of the GovHR compensation classification plan, and I used them. So I looked at those communities as comparables. Some of them have personnel boards, some of them don't, and they kind of vary in terms of authority and whether it's advisory or not, or sort of a mix of both. And then I took that, I looked at, you know, Concord, other bylaws for other committees and boards that are mapped out in the charter, just to get a sense of what, you know, what is out there for Concord. And then I started to make amendments to the existing bylaw, but I realized pretty quickly that the bylaw is very intertwined with our personnel policies and procedures. In fact, all of our policies point to the bylaw. So I was concerned about making changes to the bylaw. If I wanted to make sure that there was a corresponding policy that so that we weren't losing any policy or information. And there are some areas that I identified, or at least I hope I would have happy for feedback, but I think that we don't actually have policies outside of the bylaw to sort of ensure that those are covered. And I mapped that out in a grid that I sent to Kimberly, which I hope you have. And then from doing that work, I decided to just sort of start from scratch. I set the current bylaw aside and I mapped out a bylaw that's sort of similar in scope and duties and responsibilities that we have talked about through our conversations with our charge. And through the Personnel Study Task Force, at least I tried to capture some of that, or as much of it as I can. I mean, it's a very, very first draft. So happy for any feedback on what I've sent and what you have.
So, Kate, can you give us a bit more? You obviously you did a great job of pulling in a lot of different sources as you described, and I think I captured them all. How about the intention? So behind this, we had wanted to do just as you described by separating out what should be in personnel policies and procedures versus the bylaw, and so it would really streamline the specific issues that would remain in the bylaw. So is there, and make, the goal was to also make it quite a bit shorter, right?
Correct.
So that it would be, you know, as Bill's, to think of Bill here, his phrase is always that you can go to one place and find what you need to understand what the community does, the board, right?
Right. Yeah, right. And I think, I think Mark actually talked about this a little bit last time, and sort of really paring down our bylaw to be, more broadly worded, and moving things that are really policy based to personnel policies. And I mean, and maybe Kimberly and Mark can speak to this, but it almost, when I was looking at the policies and looking at the bylaw, it seemed as if the bylaw was functioning as a policy in certain ways. And like I said, I was concerned that if we sort of pared down the policy, or I'm sorry, the bylaw to be more broadly worded, we might lose some of that policy. So that's why I kind of broke it down into a grid, but I don't know if Mark or Kimberly wanted to comment on that a little bit.
I'd be happy, to make comment. Kate, I really appreciated the grid that shows, what's in the bylaw and what's missing, from policies or vice versa. Because I think if I understand the mission that we're on here, it's kind of to create a handbook that is comprehensive of all policies and procedures, where we've got these missing pieces, where there's a number, but there's no corresponding policy. It seems like we want all those policies in one place. And your bylaw should function like an overarching theme around that, not as the day-to-day policy manual. And so I really appreciated your separating the two out and making kind of a clear path for some type of an employee handbook. And there may be other, in fact, I'm sure there are other items that we would want to include in a handbook that aren't contemplated in the bylaw, but those things can be dealt with, separately.
So when, I'm not sure we're on the same page with what the handbook should cover. So do you have a list in your mind, Kimberly, of what?
Well, I have a backdrop of handbooks for back home.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of pay policy items that are covered in
the
your
bylaw.
bylaw.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and they should go in the hand.
That should be, in my opinion, that should be in your handbook, because you're gonna change that from time to time, right?
Yeah.
Or need to make adjustments from time to time, and you don't wanna have to go to the bylaw each time. There are time off, uses of vacation time versus sick time, how you can use sick time, for family sick versus regular sick or personal sick and that type of thing. And that's another section of your policy manual. But there are potentially other things that aren't contemplated in your policy manual or your bylaw today that you may want to consider. And I don't have an example off the top of my head. I have to do a quick compare and contrast, but I believe that to be the case.
So a handbook and a policy manual are the same thing. The handbook would have the set of policies that the town uses under this non-exempt employee grouping.
Or non-union.
Yeah, I'm sorry, non-union, that are under the personnel board.
Mhm.
And those policies and procedures would be the major aspect of a handbook.
Correct.
Okay.
So when a new employee is onboarded, they can be provided all of that information in one place. And in most organizations, you sign for that. That you understand it's your responsibility to read through it and comply with it. And so that'd be my recommendation long term.
Okay.
So
Other
Kimberly,
things-
oh no, sorry. I wanted to I wanted to ask another question about, so what I noticed, so we have personnel policies and procedures, and then we have administrative policies and procedures, and there's not a lot of, there's some overlap. So I noticed there's for example, ADA, reasonable accommodation processes under administrative versus personnel, and then the military duty leave is also under administrative. So I guess I was trying to get in a sense of what's the difference? I mean, I think I understand the difference, but I'm curious why they are split out in that way. Because I guess I'm a little concerned that it is confusing for not only employees but residents, that we have these two sets of policies and they overlap.
I don't know the history behind that. I don't know. I don't mean to put you on the spot here. Did you know the history behind having PPPs and APPs?
Well, I don't, but Kate, I would guess where you named some, what we would consider personnel policies, they're called APPs because the PPPs are only tied to the non-union employees that fall under the bylaw. We
Oh, I see.
probably need to call them something else because it is confusing. But that would be my guess, Kate, but I don't know for sure.
That makes sense, actually. I hadn't thought of that, so.
So APPs are for everyone and PPPs are only for employees that fall under the bylaw. I get that, yeah, that makes sense.
No, it actually doesn't make sense, but well, you understand what I'm saying.
The words make sense, but it might be better that
If there's
clarity.
Wait a minute, then, as an example, we mentioned ADA and military leave.
as an APP.
And those apply to it,
Yes.
Okay.
So they're not mutually exclusive categories, so I think that's where you're saying, why do we do this, right? Because the PPPs fit under the APP.
They are a subset of certain APPs, but then we have APPs that have sort of really nothing to do with
Yeah.
terms of employment. But,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah, so for those that deal with employment, PPPs are a subset of APPs dealing with employment.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, this is a little truncated because I have to type and leave, so I'm happy, Kate, for you to continue your comments, so.
No, I mean, I guess what I'm looking for sort of feedback if we want to talk about the draft of the personnel board that I had sent on. I don't know if people have had a chance, everyone has had a chance to read and digest and provide some feedback.
I think it's much streamlined, Kate. The only question I had in here is, I remember there was something about, might not be the right words, but a grievance from an employee or resolving a dispute that I don't think I saw unless I missed it. Was that moved somewhere else or did I miss it?
No, I think you're right. I don't think it's in the bylaw. Yeah, maybe I may have missed some. I mean, I was, kind of putting this together. So if there's something that's
No,
missing.
that was the only thing I know. The rest is streamlined. I mean, I like the language that's in it around, providing recommendations and working with the town manager, and it covers kind of the employee stuff we've been talking about. Policies, procedures, things of that nature. So it's 39 and 40, the pages I'm referring to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. The town of Concord, Massachusetts Personnel Board bylaw, section 1 and section 2. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the wrong page, I think. You said it's 39 and 40 are those of the
That's of
The
the packet with 452 pages.
aha, okay, so.
Sorry
yeah.
about that. I don't know if you needed all that data. I always feel like more is, well, maybe more is not. Anyway.
Okay, I'm on the right page now, so section 2, duties and responsibilities, so we do have to get that one part back in the board bylaw then, is that
That's,
the,
I remember that being in
Yeah.
before, if it's still part of the role of the personnel board. I mean, I haven't been here where one of those has occurred yet, but
Right, nor me, but yeah. That's definitely a current responsibility.
yeah,
And I was curious about the one requirement, so this is the last sentence in the first section of the first paragraph. Where it references someone with a background in finance, and that may be more for Liz and Bill, if that's an actual requirement. It doesn't affect the current board, but in the future, if we were looking for a replacement. You know, that could be limiting potentially into who you would
Yeah.
add.
We could change that to a may. I think we had talked about wanting sort of a little more diversity. I mean, having individuals on the board with expertise in personnel, HR is important, but having the finance background to really kind of dig into the impact that some of the changes would have budgetarily, you know.
I don't disagree at all with the concept, it's more, is it a must or not a must?
Yeah.
And the way it read to me is that it was more of a must.
Yeah, that could change to a may and not be a shall.
Shouldn't.
Or should,
Should.
one member should have professional, whatever word, I don't know what's.
Yeah, okay, so lighten that sentence, so. All right, I'm gonna make sure I get the right page of it and everything. All right, I'm just gonna highlight it on my copy and I'll get it in the minutes properly. Okay. All right, so, is everyone here that you were waiting for or not quite?
Jason is on it,
Jason,
and Aaron McCloskey is joining us in, I guess in Alan's stead.
okay,
Aaron is the highway and ground superintendent for public works. And so his team is part of the group, that's contemplated in the standby policy update today.
okay, so should we shift and come back to the bylaw discussion? Is everyone all right with that? So we can have guests who are tired and been from one meeting to the next.
Sure.
All right.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for, I think that I was gonna be here for, but I know Alan's finished up with the public works commission, but
Oh, so he's also going to come after though.
he's planning on coming over here, and we were kind of wrapped up, I got asked my section of the meeting, so I.
Oh, okay.
over here.
Why don't we start and see, okay, if there are, because you might not have any questions that can't be answered.
Yeah. Okay.
And so before you tonight, we had updates to the standby pay policy, which we're really very excited about. In the past, there have been some groups within the town that have had standby. Now, first of all, let me say what standby pay is, because it can be a little confusing. Standby pay is the pay that an employee receives when they hold the phone for overnight and weekend calls. And so they aren't necessarily responding, driving into town, but they know who to call or how to address situations as they arise after hours, on weekends, and so forth. And so in the past, it's my understanding that parts of the town have had access to standby pay and other groups have not. And so what we're trying to do, first of all, in the policy is make sure standby is defined properly, that everybody has a common understanding of what the expectations are on standby, so you'll see physically and mentally prepared to respond to a situation. There's a time commitment, you have to stay within a certain parameter so that you can respond accordingly if you do have to come in, and that you have to be, capable. And so what you'll see before you tonight is a red line version that specifies which employees are deemed competent to actually perform standby work, what their requirements are, and then the pay that has been assigned for particular groups. Some of these groups are hourly employees, and so typically you'll see a certain number of hours being applied for their standby pay, and then some are exempt employees.
who get no overtime pay or no pay, straight line pay for standby. So you'll see stipend amounts and then footnotes that describe how those stipend amounts were arrived at. And in the past, we did have additionally some folks that were paid from Friday to Friday versus Monday to Monday. So we've standardized that and everyone is being paid on a Friday to Friday cycle. And I believe that captures the adjustments that we've made in trying to make a more consistently themed policy that is fair to everyone involved. And so I wonder what questions there might be.
Just to clarify, I'm reading correctly, so we're adjusting from 1 hour of pay per day, which would be 7 for a week. Is that the way to think about it? For being on call to 16 hours for each week, unless there's a holiday. Or is that?
Where exactly are you looking, Joe?
So I'm on
It's 31.
page 2 of 5. This is page 31. In the crossed out section in the middle of the page, it references that the employees who are on standby duty are eligible for 1 hour for each day of the week assigned. I'm just trying to understand what the change is, if that's what's happening. So if I read that literally, sounds like the current policy is we're paying people 7 hours per week to be on stand call or standby.
So you have to look at the crossed out part. In the crossed out part, it says will receive 1 hour standby pay for each day of the week assigned. And then in the A section below, 16 hours of straight time pay for each weekly period of standby duties. That's what you're comparing.
Yeah. And the only question I was gonna ask is just whoever developed this, was 16 hours comparable to other towns, or what was the logic behind that?
I believe that 16 hours appears in another section for other employees who were receiving that amount prior.
Okay,
And so it was to make, I believe it's to make everyone.
so some
on
people
even
weren't getting that.
Okay, now I'm confused a little bit, I'm sorry. Having not interacted
I
with
see it
standard
now,
pay,
page
so
34.
A and B on that same page are saying that. So if you are on standby, you get. When standby isn't required, you're paid another 16 hours?
No. I'm gonna take a crack at this and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, okay? 2 pages back, if you look at what would be page 5. There's a section toward the top where the telecommunications group had always gotten 16 hours of straight time pay when there was not a town holiday, and 24 hours of pay when there was a town holiday. And so page 2 people who are in the public works department are just made equal. Their standby is now equal to the standby of the telecommunications group. Do you see where I'm?
I see that
Okay.
now, but now I also see another one that's different, which are the line workers.
Correct.
So they're higher than both of those, so there's still that difference.
There is, because the jobs are different.
Okay.
And so to answer your question, Liz, the difference between 16 hours and 24 hours is if you carry the phone on a week that does not include a regular town holiday, that week of standby is worth 16 hours of straight time pay for that week. And if it's during a week that has a regular town holiday, then it's worth 24 hours.
So really, the change is for water and sewer employees.
Correct. Because you can imagine carrying the phone on a holiday week is a real drag. If your family wants to travel out of town, you can't go.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I understand what's here now.
And our goal was to memorialize the calculations that we used, so that in the future, we all know how we arrived at what we arrived at. And then also there's an escalator clause, which did not exist before, so that each year, the amount of the pay increase that's granted, these stipends adjust by the same amount. So if there's a 3% increase, the stipends adjust by 3%. And that was received very well.
And before they hadn't gone up
It'd been the same number for years.
for, you're looking confused.
I'm just waiting to see what they're gonna ask.
Go ahead.
No, that was definitely one of the issues, that on a regular basis, there wasn't an adjustment, so I think, I don't wanna speak for Dave, but I think what we had was about 3 years outdated, so employees are frustrated because the value of the benefit is reduced over time because they're losing out on the salary adjustment.
Mhm.
And hourly employees that are paid hourly, of course, their hourly rate changes every year,
Mhm.
so theirs goes up. But the exempt employees that are getting the stipend stayed flat. So this allows the stipend to grow as well. Is there a note about who we're still working with? I think that's probably. There's not a note in the policy about who we're still working with, so forgive me, but Carrie, that's a great point. Our facilities group that I mentioned just transitioned under Public Works. We are still working with them to determine who's qualified to carry the phone and how that's going to work. But our full intention is to make sure that standby pay, that folks who stand by in facilities are included in the policy and features.
And so what would be the next step to get them included in the policy? Would this change it in some way to include them, or is it just when they're designated?
It'll be their designation, I think, Karen. Would you agree? I don't think we're blazing any trail.
Right, I was just trying to remember if they are, because we have all the public works by groups, I think we would need to amend the policy to add them as a group.
So, wouldn't it be easier to put that amendment in this revision, and then they would be allocated into that group as they become eligible? Would you want to do that now so that it's a smoother process, or what?
Well, so the issue is this has been outstanding for going on a year. And it's a great source of frustration, not only for the employees, but also for us, because we are hearing about this on a regular basis. So we know what we need to do with these groups of employees. I think we had hoped that facilities, we would be at a point where we could fold them in. We just didn't get there, and we didn't want to hold this up for another month going into winter.
When they'll be called. I get it. I understand that too, and. Yeah, it was last month, I think the lights went out for a little bit, and I knew it wouldn't be long because you guys were on duty, and it really wasn't, so. All right, so there still will, as Joe pointed out, there'll still be 2 different processes. And then there'll be a new group of people that'll come into and will fit under one of those 2 processes.
Benefits.
Yeah. Okay, do you have any questions?
I think you're on mute, Kate.
Sorry about that. I was just, I don't really, I guess my only question is this, and maybe you already asked this, Joe, I'm sorry, but did you sort of look at other communities to get a sense of what others, do for similar types of standby pay? Is this comparable? It's really my only question.
I have not personally compared it to other jurisdictions, but I would ask the fellas, that are with us tonight, how you feel it compares. You've been dealing with this for a long time.
So for the light plant, it is an attractive call pay. It's in line with what some others do, but each MLP handles the call structure differently. So I can't say across the board it's the same because it's not. But of the MLPs that have standby, this is very comparable.
Dave, I think the other point to add to Kate's question is that it's part of our compensation strategy for line workers and engineers at the light plant. So we do take this into consideration when we're looking at their base pay as well.
Correct.
And so then since we've been working with a lot of job descriptions and trying to understand how to hire well, having this as part of the compensation strategy also allows for that conversation to look attractive to employees that you need to hire.
Yes.
Okay.
Just another, sorry.
I was just gonna say standby is for some of the grades of line workers is a requirement, right, Dave? And so to ensure that there's attractive pay in response to that is important.
That's kind of what my question was gonna be, just out of curiosity, how often are employees, or like what percent of the employee population is required to do this? Is it all of them or every now and then?
Certain levels, you'll see some of the jobs are named, specifically named.
Okay.
And some of those positions, like the exempt positions, only have one incumbent. So it rotates between like a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, and a supervisor. So one of them is always on call. For line workers, Dave, you have less than a handful, I think, that are qualified, correct?
Yeah, about 5 right now. Total in the department of people that are on call is around 16. That includes the broadband folks as well. So, and this department size is about 43, so it's close to a third are eligible for call pay.
And then, Aaron, not to put you on the spot, but you can speak to the highway and gas.
Yes, ma'am. Back to the first question on the comparable communities. Yeah, we look in at other communities and how they're structured. Public works, highway and grounds is the civic management employees. We look at directors and superintendents, and most of the surrounding communities provide a stipend, either it's a monthly rating type of stipend or some response. I would note that there was historically in Concord a emergency response aid program for those 2 positions previously outside of the standby aid policy that's in front of the person on board this evening, where there was a structure. So this is a revision of that. It doesn't list the specific employees, but within highway and grounds and public works, for winter response, and in our division of work is 3 employees: the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the operations manager. And within those, it says that we're all on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's 3 that are rotating through, and that's the intention of our program.
That's a different level of burden to know that you're regularly on, someone's on call all the time. And when there's a real emergency, it can't be just one that's responding, right?
Right, so typically for a winter operation and going into the winter when we're on call, or we're monitoring the roads in the system, so we have a remote monitoring capability for winter storm maintenance. And I would direct anybody to I have a winter maintenance presentation I'm giving the Public Works Commission next month. It's an annual presentation I give it in November meeting, right, in depth on our winter response program. But when it comes to monitoring the roadways, we'll come in overnight, physically inspect the roads when we have temperatures. They're nearing freezing. It's not just the classic snowstorm, but it's the icing event. We have mixed precipitation. We have to make a decision. It's a $10,000 call whether or not I'm calling in a group to salt the roads, whether it's snowing or not, just to make sure that they're safe from motor vehicle transportation for our town. So and that's very frequent throughout the winter time. It's constant, I would say, is the right word, for the, you know, from November to March. It's less in the, obviously, the off season, but you have storms like you mentioned, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a power outage. We had a full department response, and, you know, all three management employees were in at that point. When we have this full department, it's not just one of the three. The on-call person might be the first one here, but other people are coming to support.
I don't think this is actually an academic question, but it's more, as climate change is changing our environment. There was a Times article that showed the heat index has gone up significantly over the last 50 years. And I'm assuming that, you know, you have a compensation strategy that involves these things. Have you been starting to monitor if there's an uptick in either winter or summer on-call allocation? Or?
Are you doing trends?
For events,
Events?
Yes. yeah, we track every event, every response, the severity, with, you know, the temperature, what's going on, how many people are coming in, the duration of the event, the cost of the event. And we had that for, I've been with the town for 4.5 years, we've had it for at least 5 years.
And do you see a change over that time, or is it more a consistent?
I would say, we've seen some more significant events off seasons, you know, outside off season is like during the summertime, outside the winter time, but that's, you know, some uptick in severe weather events where it's, you know, CMLP response, CPW response for trees down, highway, things like that. In the winter time, it's been, I'd say it's fairly consistent. You know, I think people often say, you know, last winter was light because there wasn't a lot of snow, but there was a lot of big precipitation events. And the number of events in department responses is pretty consistent year to year. Obviously, you might have a one, you know, back in when it's 2014, where you had 13, 14, you had significant snow in February, or it was back-to-back events, but they're pretty.
So you don't see a big change at this point, because I think, you know, if you hit me with, it's every time you have to really make a decision, you're bringing in people, it's 10,000 to do that work. And that could change the, you know, your budget, right? If there was an uptick, and that we should look at that, but it doesn't sound like we're there yet. That a fair statement?
I would say, you know, we're trying to, you know, we're, as far as the budget goes, you know, as technology advances, we're trying to implement more technology to help us make better decisions, you know, to whether it's, you know, reduce costs, reduce environmental impacts, you know, utilize our resources, optimize our, you know, operations. There's a cost associated with that. I think it's a long-term cost savings for the town, but there's, you know, some initial investments that it could be made, and the town has made, you know, in the last few years to help improve our processes. We're better utilizing our staff, you know, we're not wasting time. Like was mentioned earlier, the burden to come in and, you know, off hours and to be away from it. So we try to make responsible decisions, you know, not only for the operation, but, you know, for our staff as well.
Okay, that's it for me. Is Joe, do you have any other?
No, thank you.
questions? No. Jason, did you want to have a chance to comment how this is going to affect your team, or?
You're muted, Jason.
Maybe it's a double mute. 'Cause-
Me now? Can you hear me now?
It-
I was just gonna say, we're dealing with this right now. We have a network engineer who's on call and available, working on a broadband network issue. So it's much appreciated from the team, the attention on this. They appreciate policies being updated and applicable. And I think this is moving things in the right direction. So we appreciate the help.
Well, and I am hearing Carrie's voice saying, we are dealing with this because people are bringing it to us. So having a policy that's updated can really help to motivate people and feel more recognized and understood and by the town. So I think that helps the town manager do the right thing for staff too. It sounds like this is something we should move on and recognize that there may be another addendum that has to come before this group again, right? But that we try to do that quickly. Yeah. Joe, is there any other last?
No,
No? Kate, how about you?
Yeah, no, I just,
I'm
I,
good.
oh,
Nope,
Okay,
no, go ahead.
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I really, you know, the staff's gonna appreciate the, adder, the accept, you know, each year going up the percentage that the adjustment does. Cause that's been a big issue with my team. And we've only made the adjustment a couple times over the last 20 years, so, you know, we feel really good about that, and I think that's gonna go a long way with the staff.
Okay,
Well, I actually had one more question. Sorry, I didn't want to keep you all there, but when would this go into effect upon the personnel board voting? Does it impact this fiscal year? I'm just sort of curious about fund, not that that's in our purview funding, but I just was curious about how that would work.
It goes into effect upon your approval of it.
Okay.
From a funding
and I guess
standpoint,
the other comment back though.
Budget.
Kate, yeah,
Well,
the
no, I mean,
budget's
just sort of
there,
budgets
that's-
and sort of what, if there's, you know, clearly there's a monetary impact because the pay is shifting, it's changing. And so I was just curious about that.
from the light plant standpoint, funding will not be an issue.
I think that actually means you're understaffed, David, so.
Need people.
That's right there.
Even if we were full staff, we'd be okay.
All the work that way around is funded out of the winter maintenance budget.
It's funded under winter maintenance, okay, got it, all right. And Jason's smiling, so I'm thinking he's fine. Is that right?
Broadband falls under CMLP, so yeah, we're
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, and as Kate said, it is in our purview to look at the finances of it, but we don't want to put you with an added burden, certainly by not making the question, you know, as part of the discussion. Is that about right,
Exactly.
Kate?
Yeah, you said that much better than I did. Thank you.
All right, I think, well, congratulations. I think that, you know, this kind of change is something that can really help everyone feel what the town really wants to say, which is we appreciate you. Honestly, I feel very, you know, having come on the personnel board, now I really understand the underworkings of the town, and I really do appreciate all of you very much. So I'm glad that we're able to do this and that it manages up. So, Mr. Cathcart, do you want to say any comments? We're kind of wrapping up, but.
The perfect time. Thank you for the consideration.
Well, I think we had a good discussion so that we understand why, what, and how is going on, and the changes. So I might, I'll probably have to listen to the video to make sure I captured all your comments. And probably for this discussion, I'll put your names with the comments, if that's all right, so that we can have clarity over where considerations were emphasized. And I think with that, we should take a motion. Kate, why don't you make the motion?
All right, I move to approve the amended standby policy in our packet. Sound good?
I'll second that motion.
All right, and now we have to do the formal vote with Kate not in the room. So Kate, do you
Yes.
agree? with
Yes.
the motion? Yes. And Joe?
Yes.
And Liz, yes, I agree. So we approve.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Yeah. That would be good news.
That's great. Right. So that was a big part of our meeting. Is there anything else that you all want to say? Mr. Cathcart, you just arrived. Is there any urgent messages that you want on record, or?
No, I just appreciate the activity, you know, and interest, and we're working closely with Kimberly, so. You know, there's been a lot of need for a long period of time, and I see we're just starting to, you know, sort of check things off, and I see progress, and very much appreciated as staff, so thanks for the support.
Well, I think everybody here would would want Kimberly to stay with us longer. So if you can make it not snow for a while, maybe she'll stay a little longer. But we too have appreciated all the work that Kimberly's put into this and other things, because this is one thing that the board has really been concerned about is the, you know, the folks who work for the town understand and see that the town appreciates them. And now with Kimberly's great support and leadership, we're able to feel a small part of that effort, so. Okay, all right, so, it's absolutely fine, you guys jump out of there. But thank you very much,
Take care.
for joining
Thank you.
us. Thanks for coming. All right, so I think we should turn back to the personnel bylaw and the work that Kate did to really try to help us understand where we would fit. So I've got to get my notes back to the right place, sorry. Again. Okay, so I think we had one small change in section 1, which is reasonable, that's already on record. And I do think, so we keep doing this in our meetings, so I'm going to do it again, I apologize in advance, but everything is interconnected. So Kate, I thought your approach to this was really helpful. To look at other towns, to look at other bylaws of committees in our town, and to try to see what can be divested from the personnel bylaw. But then now we're not only talking about bylaw and charge, we're also talking about policies and procedures and putting that into some handbook format. And as far as I understand, and Mark, you're probably longest in the know on this, any handbook that exists is at least a decade old, is that right?
Yeah, it's mostly, I think typically most employees have received maybe a pile of personnel policies and procedures and APPs. And, you know, in a binder and sort of roughly referred to as the handbook, maybe in conjunction with their job description and a couple of other documents. Indicating that they've received that, but I think we could certainly do more to streamline that information for employees.
Yeah.
In the future.
How would we go about that? Because it seems to me that there are differences with each department too. Does that, I mean, these are more generic than that. The handbook and all that would go into a handbook. I'm looking to Kimberly because you have the most vision, I think, of what that handbook should cover.
I'll give you my opinion and I'll look to Kate and Joe as HR professional to give an alternate view if they have one. But typically what I've seen in a union environment is you have a personnel handbook that applies to everyone, but it has comment that union contracts, bargaining agreement supersede anything. So if one union has negotiated something that's a little different for one characteristic within the handbook, of course, the collective bargaining agreement prevails. But that way, you know, this idea of having our employees on as even a footing as possible, I think is really helpful. Not to the extent that some departments or divisions or bargaining units, you know, their work is different, and so their benefit is different, or their parameters are different. That's understandable in a lot of cases. Having contracts for police and fire and for general. But that's kind of the direction that my mind is moving. And this is a project, and Carrie can speak to this because it's her choice, but this is a project that I believe that we'll continue to be working on beyond November.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, my experience is very similar. And for company policies and procedures, like an anti-harassment and equal employment type things that are applicable or state laws, you know, ADA, federal laws that apply apply regardless of what's in a collective bargaining agreement. Those are typically standardized, and then the benefits and pay or other things may change depending on what's bargained between the employer and the bargaining unit.
And
And you
I
would refer
assume,
back to that
yeah,
CBA or,
refer back to it, and then as needed as other things, you know, state level policies, et cetera, get updated.
you would have.
Then the handbook would have to be
Sure.
updated as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
But it follows, it doesn't lead.
Right.
Okay, all right. It feels like we're in a morass, guys. We keep, you know, there's one thing and we get going forward and then the next, and then it doesn't quite, you know, help us to make progress. And we do have these deadlines, so.
I'd like to really recognize the work that Kate did, because I do think it's a very important step forward in,
Yeah,
you know, significant movement towards something that I think we can build on. I just got a chance to read it in the last day or two, and I'm not looking at I hope I'm looking at something that was contained in an email that came out on the 9th, so the Word document, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming that I'm looking at the same thing. So it's really good. I think that it captures a lot of the elements that we need, which is it's not gonna be out of date as soon as it's approved. I think it covers the broad scope and tries to identify the spirit of which the personnel board is gonna act. I did notice that it doesn't necessarily address the whether there would be any involvement in issues related to grievance or escalation of decisions, and I think that's a good discussion to have. In conjunction with the town manager, that I note that could be one of the things that's under letter A, you know, broadly propose and approve any personnel policies and procedures in consultation with town manager. So that could be another place for a laundry list, just like the ones around advice and recommendations on non-wage provisions. And I do think that it makes a lot of sense for the personnel board to try to support adoption of a bylaw with, you know, with appropriate policies and procedures that have been updated to reflect anything that gets removed. The only thing that I noted that might also make sense to do is to consider what, if any, responsibilities are appropriate for the personnel board to have with respect to either reporting to town meeting, obviously F.
Yep.
And I think it's the one about the class and comp study, whichever letter that is, C, I think, allude to some specifics which have traditionally been involved with, but whether or not we want to say anything about the relationship between the personnel board and the select board, and that's something that we could institutionalize in the charge rather than the bylaw. I don't think it has to be there. But I do think that as we're trying to solve this entire puzzle, we should have a dialogue about that piece.
sorry, Mark, so there were two parts that I believe that you wanted a dialogue. One was with the town manager, who is thankfully here tonight, to talk about this involvement in issues of grievance. And then whether the personnel board and select board relationship should be in the bylaw or
Right.
in the charge, is that
And
right?
consider whether there are any additional information needs that the personnel board should be trying to satisfy on behalf of town meeting. So if you think about the stakeholder communities that the personnel board engages with, you know, I think the bylaw should try to make it clear what, if anything, takes place between the personnel board and employees. What, if anything, takes place between the personnel board and town meeting, and what, if anything, takes place between the personnel board and the select board. As for example, I think the select board would do well to delegate the evaluation of personnel administration on behalf of the town in terms of how it evaluates that, considers that as part of the town manager's responsibilities. I think that the select board should be delegating that to the personnel board to assess and read back and maybe report back to the select board on an annual basis. We don't have the time or the resources or the skills really to adequately judge that. That's been called out in previous town manager evaluations where the select board is essentially punted and said, we don't know enough about personnel administration to judge it one way or the other, so we're assuming that it is what it is. And I think that's a place where the select board could be supported by the personnel board in that effort.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I get, so this would be in terms of the role that the personnel board has to assess the actions over the year
Yeah.
of the town manager and report back to the select board. But in order to do that, the personnel board would have to understand what the goals of, compared to what was accomplished, what the goals were.
Yeah,
And we don't have that information,
so
right?
typically the town manager and the select board negotiate a set of town manager goals each year. And so those are published. And then at the end of the year, we come back and evaluate.
Okay.
The town manager usually submits a self-evaluation and the select board then takes a look at that. And what I've noted in the past is that where the elements of personnel administration or, even issues like success in recruiting or maintaining full employment or any of those kinds of things are concerned, the select board is usually unable to really develop its own opinion in that. And I think that would be an appropriate place for us to turn to the personnel board and say, what's been your observation over the year and how might you help us evaluate that? And like I said, I don't know that necessarily needs to make it into the bylaw. It could be something we could try out as an element of the charge. Because the charge is essentially a document of understanding between the personnel board and the select board in this case, because both are created through the town charter.
Do you guys have any comments on whether you think that would go in the bylaw or the charge, that last piece? No,
I don't.
it's.
Yeah, in thinking about it, I think that might be, I'm not sure that I would put it in a bylaw, but I think a charge, I think that's where we're gonna put a lot more of the detail and what the duties and responsibilities, at least this is what we've talked about, duties and responsibilities are going to be and sort of delve into what that means. But we can have a conversation about that. I think it's a reasonable, it's a good point to bring forward.
So how would I propose this, given no comment, but your comment, but it seems to me that more discussion, yes.
Yeah.
It feels to me like it might be something that should be in the bylaw, but we're not ready for it to be in the bylaw because we don't know the kinks, like how would that work? What information would we need? And could we get it to make sure that it is an effective and supportive process, right? So what if we say that for this year, we put it in the charge, and then if we agree that this is a really, helpful, and I think that if I'm correct or not, Mark, let me know, but it seems to me that what you're hinting at is that that's quite a change for the select board. To delegate more to responsible boards or commissions or committees, these sorts of things, or is that happening only?
Well, the select board routinely delegates zoning to the planning board. And routinely delegates environmental regulation and recommendation to the Natural Resources Commission. It's what's unusual at least in my mind, and I'm speaking for myself here, is that the Personnel Board exists as in the town charter and doesn't seem to have any
Delegated.
delegated authority or responsibilities that, even the Finance Committee is pretty much solely responsible for setting the overall spending levels. Certainly they receive a huge amount of deference to that and make a strong recommendation to town meeting. And so I'm thinking about it in those terms is what is the area of responsibility that the Personnel Board can really say, on behalf of the town, we're looking after this set of issues and trying to, so, when we consider something like our diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, for example, it seems to me that where our workforce is concerned, that's the Personnel Board. Now, how the broader community is involved, that's, the DEI Commission's
Right,
purview for sure.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's not, okay, so on diversity, equity, and inclusion, should that be in the bylaw or should that be in the charge too? Seems to me that's a bylaw.
I
statement.
agree with that. I think that should be a bylaw. Because I mean, in our current bylaw, there's actually a section that says, which I incorporated into here, the purpose of this bylaw is to create an equitable and efficient system. And in order to do that, you want to ensure that, your hiring and retention are truly inclusive, right? So I agree. I think it should be in the bylaw.
And maybe this isn't strong enough that we can look at the language, but in letter H, there is reference to this topic, which I feel is very important and should be in here, but is this enough or different than what we're talking about?
I think that's a good point. I think it's the kind of thing that probably should be made explicit. I mean, things like equal opportunity reporting for the federal government and things like that, you want to assume and really understand that those things are always going on and routinely handled, but if it's not the Personnel Board who's actually sort of checking or reviewing compliance with those things, I don't know who is.
All right, so then we need to be held to some sort of tracking.
Yeah.
Right, which thanks to Kimberly, we have more information about how we track, right, back to the dashboard, right? So it doesn't have to, the dashboard space doesn't have to be in the bylaw perhaps, but there should be some identification to make H stronger. How would that go forward, right? We can't just say this is the responsibility without understanding that it has to be assessed on an annual basis, or, there should be a strategy around it.
Yeah.
Does that sound reasonable, Kate? Yeah?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, that perhaps could be a standalone, not an H, it could be its own section. We could discuss diversity, equity, inclusion on its own.
So I'm gonna write, and with some indication regarding how the Personnel Board would be responsible to track results. Is that vague enough, but pushy enough for us to reword it in that way?
I think something along those lines is the direction, because essentially what we want to do is make sure that the bylaw, because the town manager, the select board, everybody has to provide for their has to be responsive to things that are in the bylaw. And so we want to be kind of even-handed about assigning responsibilities across the board, for those things.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, honestly, Kate, you brought us ahead you brought us forward in this, which we hadn't had, so I really appreciate the time you put in to doing this. I'd love it if we had both Bill and Pamela with us as well. And I want to remind us that, you know, we have some deadlines. We're not behind at all. But to promote and push this forward for town meeting next year, we do need a draft to go forward. And honestly, given all that we hedged with last year with town meeting, I know that what we can do is kind of a placeholder in December, which gives us through to January to really get a solid final on this. But you've put us in a position where we're almost ready to do that, Kate, so I thank you very much. But I do think we need to maybe consider another meeting when we can have both Pamela and Bill here, so that we can really push forward on this. Now, I say that now I'm realizing, Kimberly, that you too have other things that you're really working hard to move forward with, job descriptions and so forth, that need to come to us. So do you have any idea, excuse me, of a time frame that might work for one additional meeting?
Well, I think we can post a meeting anytime you're ready.
Right, but when you're ready too, right, with job descriptions that you need us to review, is there another tranche of them coming?
There are plenty that still need to be done, and so if you all pick a date, you know, 2 weeks from now or whatever, we'll have items to discuss.
Okay.
We have other policies that we're continuing to work on now that we're finished with state, or once they finish, but we've gotten standby approved. We have a uniform policy that we're working on to make the town look more, you know, when our folks show up at people's residence, you understand what a town employee looks like. You know, they're appropriately attired.
Yeah.
More to come on that, and boots and prescriptions, glasses, goggles, all kinds of stuff we have to do. So there are plenty of things for us to take at any meeting then.
Okay. All right, so I will, organizationally, I can do that. I can send around a note to all of us. So I will just try to get some dates. I'm getting very good at like Google Forms, so I can send out a quick thing and you can say yes, no on dates, okay? Is that okay, Kate? If we'll try.
Yeah, sounds good.
You know, this
Yeah,
works
sounds good to me.
fine, I think. If you can't get back and we can do it this way, you know, so it's, you know, it's as easy a schedule. I know we've been pushing a lot with this committee this year, so. All right, okay, so I went to logistics and so forth, but I think we had some really good comments from Mark that I captured in terms of things that we might want to consider getting into the personnel board and I'm sorry, the bylaw. I was reading and talking and that doesn't work, but the bylaw. And then what we did talk is a few things that might be this delegation from select board that we might want to put into the charge for a year, so that we can work out the kinks of that and see how that goes forward before putting it in something that we can't change more easily. Are there other areas, or, I mean, we have this now and we can kind of kick it around a bit too, and get comments from Pamela and from Bill. But what I'll try to do, I guess, is for this section in particular to summarize the goals with the bylaw, which means not only the language, the additional items that we've discussed, but also our logistical timeframe. And maybe we can send that out separately so that we know there's a real focus on all of that for our next meeting, which would be interim. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, all right, and then I keep thinking we're gonna get put to a point where the personnel board is going smoothly along and everything is in working order. But what we've actually unearthed here is another big set of work, which is to make sure that the PPPs are in place, that it's all captured in a handbook, and it is available, easy download from the website for new employees and for employees anytime. All right. Is there anything else under any leaves that we need to make sure that we have on our radar as the personnel board? No? All right, the notes are not gonna be as structured, I will tell you that, because I've been talking, but I will listen to the video of our evening there. Let me just make sure we didn't miss anything on our, so the interim human resources director's report was covered with the policies that we reviewed and the individuals, okay. All right, and bylaw, I don't think we're ready for the charge, especially without Bill here. And Mark, we started a discussion, but we didn't get far enough, I think. So we'll leave that for the next meeting and hopefully for the interim so that we can see them by each side by side, okay? All right, so I'm gonna write TBD on that. And that means that before 7 o'clock, we are looking at adjournment. Is everyone comfortable with that, or should we stay longer just to, you know?
Just to avoid setting a precedent.
What do you think?
Tell Bill to follow me.
Yeah.
Next job list.
All right, so I'll tell Bill that I was more efficient, is that what I should be telling Bill? Okay. I'll tell him without he's talking, we were earlier. No, but I think this has been very helpful, effective. I think that, you know, the policy that we reviewed in the new positions was really informative. For me, it's always really helpful to see the department chairs and understand where their minds are and how they're working with you. Is really nice to see, Kimberly, so thank you for that.
They've been a joy. You guys are so kind. You more kindness than I deserve, but it's been a labor of love to really try and come up with something that works for everyone and that people feel is fair. And that's a nice little challenge when you're dealing with different operations, different needs.
Yeah,
So thank you for your comments. It's been my pleasure.
all right,
Thank you for everything you've done.
yeah. So we may have you for, if we have an interim meeting, we may have you for 2 more meetings.
You will.
But November will, in person anyway, be the last meeting that we have, so we'll.
The goal is home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Good for you, that's great. All right, so with that, does someone want to, I can do it, right? A motion to adjourn, I make a motion to adjourn, anybody seconds?
Second,
Second, and
Aye.
so I. And
Yes.
Kate? Yes, and Liz, yes, so.
Yes.
We agreed to adjourn, and that is at 6:46. All right.
Right.
My family gets pizza when I have these something. They're gonna be disappointed this evening.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I will see you all
right.
next month.
Thank you.
Bye, Kate.
Thank you,
Bye,
Kate.
bye.
All right,
Bye, bye.
Bye-bye.
okay.